Okay, for today's lesson on plaster sculpturing, you are going to need a tub of water. I would leave your tub of water on a paper towel. You are also going to need a large plaster gauze sheet, a paper towel, larger paper towel to work on top of, and your armature that you built. Now, my sculpture is going to be a wedge of cheese when I'm done with it. So mine has a flat top and bottom, sides, and then a rounded surface on this side. So what I'm going to do to start my project is I'm going to take my large sheet of plaster. I'm going to actually be cutting long ways down the length of it, dividing it just about in half. I want to cut with my regular scissors. I want my scissors dry and my plaster gauze dry. That way I don't get plaster all on my scissors and gunk them up. When I'm done with that, I'll have two strips about the same size. And you can actually stack them on top of each other to do the next cut. You're going to cut these into Band-Aid sized pieces. So you end up pieces about that size. I'm going to continue that down the length of my gauze real quick and create a pile of dry gauze strips all about the same size. Important thing to know about when you're cutting gauze, you always want your scissors dry, you always want your gauze dry, and when you are finished using your scissors for the day on the gauze, you want to take a just barely damp paper towel and kind of wipe the dust off of them, and that will keep them sharp and clean and working well. Otherwise, if you try to cut plaster when it's slightly wet, or if your scissors are kind of wet, the plaster actually turns into kind of a gummy substance and gets jammed in there and gets all over the blades and gets on other things that you try to cut with it. So, all right, almost done here cutting this up. And I have an entire pile of my gauze strips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my first strip and I'm going to dip it into my water bowl. I'm going to lift it up out of my water bowl. I'm going to actually squeeze a little bit of the water back out, let it drip back down into the bowl. And while I'm doing that, I'm actually softening the strip. The strip's made out of like a really thin fabric, like a gauze. And the plaster, once it becomes wet, becomes activated and becomes really soft. So what I want to do is I want to get the excess water out because I don't want my project to get real soggy. I'm going to work my way around the edges first. So I'm going to lay this across an edge like I'm taping it, and I'm going to smooth it down. I'm going to do my next strip and I'm going to place it overlapping with the strip I just did. So again, I repeat, I squeeze the extra water out, smooth it around a little bit, place it over the edge also, and so that it's overlapping with the strip that I did before. I want to smooth it. The plaster, when I'm rubbing this, is actually becoming liquidy and moving around. It fills those little holes and it actually bonds everything together, kind of like a paste. Now I'm going to continue to do this. Basically, I'm forming like a skin coating or a cast on my entire sculpture. Now to truly be able to coat the whole thing, I have to make sure I cover all the sides of it. I want to take my time enough to do it neatly, but I want to move quickly enough so I can make enough progress in my class period. When I finish coating this entire thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it sit and dry for at least a day. I want it to get nice and dry so that there is no moisture left in it. Now the plaster has activators in it and it will actually harden as it dries, but then there's also still some water that may need to dry out of it. And keep in mind, the gauze is a type of fabric, it's got thread in it, so it may hold a little moisture a little bit longer. Neatness matters. It makes this project turn out much better than if you try to do really big pieces or if you don't take the time to smooth everything out. Remember, take out the extra water because I don't want any extra water that I don't need. I'm going to continue to do this. Once I reach the end of this seam on this side, I'm going to continue to work my way around, and then I'm going to put some strips on the top overlapping, and then I'm going to turn my sculpture. I want to do all the sides of it. When you are finished, what you will do is you will place this on a clean, dry paper towel to dry. You will rinse out your water tub, and any leftover strips that you have, if you don't end up using them, if they've not been gotten wet, they can actually be used, and you can turn those back in. If you need additional plaster, just ask, but use up the strips that you have first, and then I will get you more. Once it's been out there and exposed the air, the plaster is only good for so long, so I try not to cut more than we need. All right, ask if you have questions, and good luck.